Is this 95?
Is this? No, right? Oh no. Bro, it matches the car though.
You should just put 95.
Nah, of course not, bro. You're crazy, man. We only put 95 into G classes. Stories with Danny. I remember a funny story actually. It wasn't running smoothly, and then I just told the guy like, "Yo, what should I do?" You know what he said? Try filling it up with 95. And then I did that, and it was running smoothly. And since then, I'm always filling up any G class besides the Bravos, of course, with